January 9th, 2022. North Korea disappears from the internet. Not partially, completely. The Air Koryo airline booking site? Gone. Kim Jong-un's government portal? Gone. Every email server the country operates? Silent. Intelligence analysts around the world start scrambling. Was it the US Cyber Command? A retaliation for North Korea's recent missile tests? A coordinated Western strike? None of the above. It was one man, sitting on his couch in Florida, in pajama pants and slippers, eating Takis and watching alien movies. And the reason he was doing it, the reason he had decided alone to declare a one-man cyber war on an entire country, is the part of this story that should concern all of us. Because he didn't do it because he was reckless. He did it because he had tried everything else first and nobody came. His name is Alejandro Caceres, 38 years old Colombian-American. Cybersecurity entrepreneur, hacker, tattoos on both arms, lives on the coast of Florida. For years, he operated in the gray zone of cybersecurity, the space between what's legal and what's necessary, where the best researchers in the world spend most of their careers finding vulnerabilities before the wrong people do. He built tools, he found flaws. He sold his work to companies and government contractors who needed people who thought like attackers. He was good at it, good enough that eventually someone noticed. In late January 2021, another researcher, someone Caceres trusted, sent him a message, a new hacking tool, something worth looking at. Caceres was careful. He opened the file inside a virtual machine, a sandboxed environment designed to contain anything dangerous. It wasn't enough. If you're new here, hit subscribe and leave a like on this video. It genuinely helps this channel reach more people. Every like and subscribe tells the algorithm this story is worth sharing. This documentary is based entirely on real, verified facts. And the more this channel grows, the better the production gets for all of you. It means a lot now. Stay with me, because what happens next is the part that changes everything about this story. Google's Threat Analysis Group published a report, a North Korean government hacking campaign targeting Western security researchers, stealing their tools, taking their vulnerabilities, building Pyongyang's own offensive cyber arsenal using the work of the people who were supposed to be on the other side. Caceres read the report, checked his own systems, and found the back door. North Korea had been inside his computer. The tool he'd received wasn't from a colleague. It was a trap. He had been targeted specifically because of the kind of work he did and the tools he had built. He managed to stop them before they got everything. But the breach had happened. A nation-state, with the full resources of a government behind it, had come for him personally. So he did what any responsible person would do. He documented everything, put together a detailed report, and contacted the FBI. He waited for a response.
Nothing.
No investigation opened, no follow-up call, no acknowledgement that what had happened to him, a US citizen targeted by a hostile foreign government, was something the government considered worth addressing. It wasn't just Caceres, and the same North Korean campaign had targeted dozens of other Western researchers. Some of them had also reported it. Most got the same response. The US government issued a general advisory about the campaign, a public warning that essentially said, "North Korea is doing this. Be careful." And then moved on. There's really nobody on our side. That's what Caceres told Wired, not as a complaint, as a statement of fact. A cybersecurity professional who had spent years working adjacent to the US government, who had done everything right, documented the attack, reported it through proper channels, waited, and received nothing in return. A year passed. January 2022. North Korea had launched multiple missile tests. The same hacking campaigns that had targeted Caceres were continuing against other researchers, and the US government had still said nothing meaningful to any of the people who had been hit. Caceres made a decision. If the most powerful government on Earth wasn't going to respond to a nation-state attack on its own citizens, then he would respond himself. First, he had to understand what he was dealing with. North Korea's internet infrastructure is, by global standards, almost absurdly small. The entire country has roughly 50 publicly accessible websites. One central router controls most of the country's connection to the outside world. The total attack surface, the amount of internet infrastructure to target, is, in Katseri's own words, like the size of a small to medium penetration test. He spent weeks scanning North Korean systems, finding known but unpatched vulnerabilities, security flaws that had been publicly disclosed, but that North Korea's IT teams had never bothered to fix, presumably because nobody had ever tried to exploit them from the outside. He wrote scripts to automate denial of service attacks against those vulnerabilities, set up a collection of cloud-based servers to amplify the volume, and then, on a January night in 2022, in a t-shirt and pajama pants, slippers on his feet, a bag of Takis on the table, Alien playing on his TV in the background, he ran the programs. He'd walk over to his home office periodically, check the progress, see which sites were still up, adjust, then go back to the couch. Air Koryo's booking site, down. Kim Jong-un's government portal, down. Email servers, down. The central router that connected North Korea to the outside world, intermittently overwhelmed. Almost every publicly visible website in North Korea was offline for days. Inside Pyongyang, the outages caused confusion at the highest levels. Intelligence sources told Wired that some North Korean officials had concluded they were under attack from a Western nation-state. The scale of the disruption, sustained, systematic, affecting multiple systems simultaneously, looked like the work of a government cyber operation. It was one man, with a laptop, and a very specific grievance. Caceres wasn't trying to destroy North Korea's infrastructure permanently. He was making a point that the US government had declined to make on his behalf. If they don't see we have teeth, it's just going to keep coming. I want them to understand that if you come at us, it means some of your infrastructure is going down for a while. Alejandro Caceres, to Wired, he also launched something he called the Funk Project. Follow up North Korea, an attempt to recruit other hackers who had been targeted by the same North Korean campaign to join a coordinated, ongoing effort to make Pyongyang's cyber aggression costly. Not a government program, not a sanctioned operation, a volunteer network of people who had been attacked and decided to fight back. Some cybersecurity experts praised what Caceres did. Others pointed out that vigilante cyber operations, even well-intentioned ones, create unpredictable risks. What if North Korea had retaliated against civilian infrastructure? What if another country decided the same logic applied to them? Caceres had an answer for that too. He had asked the US government to handle it. They didn't, so someone had to. In February 2022, Wired published the story. Anonymous, only P4X. The cybersecurity community immediately understood the significance. A private citizen had done, unilaterally, what no official US response had managed. Made North Korea's internet actually hurt. The story went everywhere. Defense analysts debated the implications. Law professors discussed the legality. Security researchers argued about the ethics. And governments, including the US, said very little publicly, which was itself a kind of answer. Then, in 2024, Wired published a follow-up, this time with the name Alejandro Caceres, Colombian-American, 38 years old, coastal Florida, hacker tattoos on both arms. The man behind P4X had agreed to be identified. In part, he said, because the story was already out there, and in part because he stood behind every decision he had made. The US government never formally commented on what Caceres had done. Nobody was charged. Nobody was warned off. The official position, as far as anyone can tell, was to say nothing and hope the story moved on. It didn't. Here's the question I can't shake after spending time with this story. The United States government spends hundreds of billions of dollars a year on national security. It has the NSA, the CIA, Cyber Command, the FBI. It has the most sophisticated offensive and defensive cyber capabilities on Earth. And when a US citizen was attacked by a foreign government, documented it, reported it through the right channels, and waited. The response was silence. Alejandro Caceres didn't have a billion-dollar budget. He had a laptop, cloud servers, and a year's worth of frustration. And he did more visible damage to North Korea's cyber infrastructure in a week than any official US response had done in the years since the attack on him. Whether that's inspiring or terrifying probably depends on who you are. But it raises a question that governments are going to have to answer eventually. When nation-states attack private citizens and those governments do nothing, what exactly are citizens supposed to do? Subscribe, because next week, a man who had access to some of the most dangerous secrets in Soviet history decided to hand all of it to the West. Not for money, for something much stranger than that. The Cold War's most important spy, and almost nobody knows his name. That's next.